Prince William stood in front of the cameras, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Within 60 seconds, he managed to say something so deeply destabilizing that the entire royal press apparatus basically short-circuited. The thing is, nobody even knew he was supposed to speak that morning. There was no schedule, no press release, and no carefully worded bulletin slipped to a friendly reporter. It was just the future king, pale as a sheet, eyes so red you could see them
for
through
hours
the screen,
before he walked out
gripping
there.
the podium
Senior
like he was
royals
holding
had locked
himself
themselves
upright.
in Christ's private archive.
And then he
and
opened
this is
his
the part
mouth
that sounds like
and
it should be
spoke of an
fiction.
irreversible
Prince William
fracture,
used the
a
deeper
moment
heat
from
stuff
which there would
buried,
be no
right as
going
Prince
back.
William's
The
announcement
wording
was
was
hitting
so
global
absolute
headlines.
that even veteran correspondents didn't know how to report it. Before we dive into the explosive chain reaction that followed, welcome back to Crown Watch. If you want deep, unfiltered breakdowns of royal power moves and palace drama, take a quick moment right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We break down the real stories so you never miss a beat. Now, let's unpack what really happened behind those locked palace doors. What made Prince William's unannounced address so alarming was that he didn't name a single person. He didn't have to. The way he spoke about betrayal and about truth being buried under decades of protocol and duty made it obvious he wasn't talking about some abstract institutional flaw. He was talking about people inside his own family. And the fact that Catherine wasn't mentioned at all, not once in the entire address, was not an oversight. It was a deliberate omission that signaled she was either the one person he was trying to protect or the one person he couldn't
Deliberate
bring
omission
himself
that
to
tells
speak
you
about
she
yet.
was either the one person he was
Royal
trying to
aides
protect
had reportedly
or the
begged
one
him to
person.
reconsider
But
for
clarity
hours
came with the
before he
price,
walked
involving
out there.
someone so
Senior
young and innocent
royals
that
had
nobody
locked
had seen
themselves in
Elizabeth's
emergency
private find
crisis
the royal
meetings.
family's
But
unraveling.
Prince William had
Catherine
already
had
made
never
his
spoken
choice.
to.
Whatever he found, whatever pushed him past his limit, was bigger than the institution itself. This was no longer about preserving the crown. It was about exposing the truth. The timeline of how William arrived at this breaking point is where the story turns unprecedented. For months, palace reporters noted he seemed visibly altered, missing scheduled engagements, looking exhausted, carrying the kind of forced smile that never reached his eyes. The public speculation was frantic, guessing at marriage troubles or health worries or rising tensions with King Charles. But nobody possessed the full picture, because the full picture was sitting inside a locked drawer in his father's private archive. Prince William had used a master key one handed down from Queen Elizabeth to King Charles during the transition. While his father was abroad, William accessed the personal archive. What he discovered were private letters between Charles and a foreign head of state. These were not diplomatic cables or official government business. They were confidential communications regarding private land, titles, and financial assets tied directly to personal royal interests agreements that directly undermined what the late Queen had spent decades building, and alliances that threatened the core integrity of the monarchy. When William confronted palace legal advisors and demanded a full accounting, he was met with stonewalling, rehearsed scripts, and stern warnings to consider the catastrophic implications. Every time he pushed for transparency, another door slammed shut. That was the moment he realized he wasn't just dealing with a few hidden letters. He was up against a deep-seated protection system designed to keep uncomfortable truths buried forever courtiers and gatekeepers who had spent years insulating the crown from scandal. The deeper William dug, the more isolated he became within palace walls. Meetings turned hostile. Conversations with his father went completely cold. What began as a son seeking clarity transformed into an all-out battle between a king desperate to maintain control and an heir who refused to live a lie. Charles pleaded with him to drop the investigation. William refused. The arguments grew so fierce that household staff were ordered to clear the entire floor. Standing in the epicenter of this crisis was Catherine. Long regarded as the stabilizing force of the royal family, she tried desperately to pull William back from the edge, warning him that exposing these secrets would shatter everything the family, the public trust, and the future of the crown. But the truth had taken complete hold of him. He wasn't acting merely as a prince. He was acting as a father, who insisted his children inherit a monarchy built on honesty rather than illusion. Catherine's fears were instantly realized because the fallout from William's address triggered a cascade of events across the globe. Right as William's statement was breaking international headlines, a private royal aircraft landed at Heathrow under strict security protocols. There were no public flight logs and no press presence, just heavy security escorting a single passenger. Prince Harry stepped off the plane looking visibly drained, clutching a sealed envelope bearing an old royal crest. It was a letter from Princess Diana, pulled from a hidden vault. Prince Harry hadn't simply decided to fly back on a whim, he had been summoned. William's dramatic public move had triggered a rarely used clause in royal emergency protocol that commands all bloodline family members to report to the United Kingdom. Meghan Markle chose not to attend, with sources indicating she mistrusted the palace environment and feared being drawn back into a system that had damaged her past. Harry boarded the flight alone, carrying a heavy physical and emotional burden. When Harry arrived at the palace, chaos erupted in the West Corridor. Princess Anne and Prince Edward personally intervened, barring Harry from entering the private royal quarters. Witnesses described a fierce standoff, with raised voices and security detail stepping between family members. Princess Anne told Harry in no uncertain terms that the situation was no longer about personal feelings, but about the very survival of the institution. Harry pushed back, waving his mother's letter and demanding to see William. But William was already gone, having departed for Sandringham and cut off all direct communication. The tragedy of the situation was that William had actually intended for his message to reach Harry first. An advance copy of his statement had been given to royal couriers with explicit instructions to deliver it directly to Harry before it hit the media. But through mishandling or deliberate interference, the message was delayed. Harry learned of his brother's public declaration through social media headlines like the rest of the world, leaving him feeling deeply betrayed. When the two brothers eventually confronted each other in a private hallway, Harry asked a single question: was he supposed to be blindsided again? William had no answer, because the situation had spiraled far beyond his control. While public attention remained fixated on the brothers, Catherine was enduring her own silent torment. Her health had been visibly declining under the immense pressure, unexplained absences, exhaustion, and days spent isolated in her quarters. The breaking point occurred when pages from a private journal belonging to Catherine were leaked just hours before William's address. The leaked entries detailed quiet agony, with one devastating line capturing global attention: "I wish I had left before this broke us all." Under Queen Elizabeth, strict protective protocols had surrounded Catherine to shield her from political and media storms. But after the Queen's passing, those protective measures were quietly altered under King Charles's new administration, leaving Catherine far more exposed to palace infighting. She had begged William to stay silent, not because she didn't support his principles, but because she knew the destructive toll it would exact on their lives. Then, Princess Anne stepped into the private royal chambers, completely shifting the dynamic. Known for her directness, Anne walked into a room filled with nervous advisors, a frozen Camilla, and an uncertain King Charles. She uttered just 6 words: "This is not what she wanted." With that single statement, Anne tore away the veil of denial. Her anger was directed squarely at Camilla and the senior courtiers who had shielded Charles from criticism. Anne accused them of compromising the bloodline integrity of the monarchy, revealing the existence of unpublished, confidential instructions left behind by Queen Elizabeth II. These were not ceremonial wishes, but protective directives drafted in the final year of her life when her health was failing and her trust in the surrounding administration had eroded. Anne stated that these private instructions had been deliberately suppressed because they directly challenged those benefiting from their absence. When Anne cited those hidden documents, an explosive argument erupted. Anne openly questioned Camilla's standing and influence, asking aloud whether the late queen had ever truly sanctioned the full scope of authority Camilla now exercised. Camilla walked out in fury, but not before claiming she was the only one keeping the family together, to which Anne replied that it was no surprise everything was falling apart. Following the confrontation, Princess Anne met privately with Prince William. She produced an envelope that had been held under her personal protection since Queen Elizabeth's passing, bearing the late monarch's untouched seal. Inside were handwritten notes containing a clear instruction: if the weight becomes unbearable, trust only the blood. Buried within Anne's revelations was a directive centered on Prince George. A hidden supplement within Queen Elizabeth's private papers outlined a specific vision for George's future one, designed to shield the young prince from internal palace politics. It established a private mentorship structure, placing George directly under the guidance of Prince William, Princess Anne, and a trusted figure outside the traditional court apparatus. Crucially, across all 14 pages of the handwritten document, Camilla's name was completely absent. This deliberate omission ignited further confrontation. Camilla accused Catherine of orchestrating a succession strategy to marginalize her influence using posthumous royal directives. Catherine's response was cold and immediate, telling Camilla that she was never part of the late Queen's long-term plan. This explained why Prince George had been kept out of the public eye. In recent weeks, he was being intentionally shielded from palace power struggles. Princess Anne had even presented George with a historic family artifact in a private chapel, symbolizing his role in preserving the integrity of the line. In response to the escalating crisis, Prince William executed a decisive move known internally as the Royal Reset Order. He formally issued a directive that restructured the internal ceremonial hierarchy, removing Camilla from any official influence over the next generation of heirs and removing her name from key future planning registers. The decree caused immediate shockwaves through the palace, leading to resignations among staff loyal to Camilla, while others quietly supported the shift. Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Catherine stood fully united alongside William. King Charles remained silent, watching the fallout from a private balcony without intervening. In the midst of this turmoil, an archived audio recording from Queen Elizabeth's storage was uncovered. The degraded tape contained the voice of Princess Diana, offering a haunting warning from the past: never trust a crown that forgets its roots. Hearing his mother's voice brought William to tears. He shared the recording privately with Princess Anne, and later played it for Prince George and Princess Charlotte in a quiet sitting room at Windsor, telling them that these words were meant to guide their family's future. When news of the recording leaked, public reaction was swift, leading to candlelight vigils outside palace gates as people mourned Diana's memory once again. Faced with an unprecedented crisis, King Charles finally addressed the nation in an unscheduled emergency broadcast. Standing before the cameras without regal backdrops or ceremonial fanfare, the king spoke with visible emotion, offering an open admission of his failures as both a monarch and a father. He admitted he had not been strong enough to keep his family united, and acknowledged that the institution could no longer operate under outdated practices. In a historic declaration, King Charles announced he would step back indefinitely from public royal duties to allow a process of family and institutional restoration to begin. Furthermore, he formally ordered that Queen Elizabeth's unpublished directives be fully reinstated as official royal protocol, ensuring her final wishes would govern the monarchy's path forward. His closing words marked the end of an era. Let the future be theirs, not mine. With that final statement, the balance of power within the British monarchy was permanently altered, resetting the royal stage and leaving the institution forever changed.